When he was very young, he said she went to America, but she did send for him, and he did try there, but of course it was no good for him, and he returned to Jamaica, which is a good thing. But at the same time, there was happiness. He had happy times with his grandfather when he would go to the fields on the donkey and help dig yams and things like that. So he had great memories of his grandfather. And
that's Bob's house, right? Bob's used to be living over there. Long time now, about 16, 17 years old.
Bob would eat out of the calabash and so forth. He would not eat out of any other plate or utensil. And he was living on a single bed inside this room here.
Cedella took Bob to live with the Livingston family, and it was here that Bob and his newfound friend, Bunny Livingston, began to experiment with music.
Bunny, father, was living with Bob. Mother, they was like man and woman, you see? So Bob come into that house where mother was living with Bunny. So my Bunny was really good friend, you see? So my understand that Trench Town, people was singing every day, people was making music, and all these things was happening.
But you see, Bob was very different from most of the musicians that were in town. You see, Bob had a part of the country in his life already, which in most of the musicians in the town, they haven't been to country, they don't know what it's about.
All his aim, his desire was in music, nothing else, you know, nothing else really that he was interested in. Beside, you know, music, that was his main thing.
Bob finished school at 16, and Peter and all of them, very young age. They did not go on to further education. They did not have time to read books to enhance their vocabulary anymore. So they were just, he was very interested in world affairs. He'd read the papers every morning, and so he was very much tuned into how the world was going. But that doesn't mean that he was an intellectual.
He was more educated from the street. He really learnt what he needed to learn. You know, inspiration instead of education is how he liked to put it. He was hanging out with, you know, the gangs, what later became known as rude boys. He was playing football on the street, hanging out on the street, hearing music on the street. I mean, that's it. Most of his education came from there.
Bob took his first job as an apprentice welder. However, after an accident that filled his right eye with metal, he became determined to make it as a singer. Bob and Bunny, along with another teenager, Peter McIntosh, formed the Wailing Rude Boys, who later became known as the Wailers. Their first song, Simmer Down, was an instant #1 in Jamaica. Early Wailers songs were based on the popular dance music style of ska. Over time, the Wailers slowed down the beat, preferring the slower, bass-heavy sound of reggae.
You had ska, first of all, which was quite up, frantic, but then it was about mid-60s and it was really hot, and ska proved to be a little bit too energetic to leap about to, so it kind of slowed down and it turned into rocksteady, which was like the link between ska and what became known as roots reggae, which is when it really got slow. And I think that's when like the ganja was kicking in as well. And it was kind of a slow evolution. The very soul of reggae music was from the Crown Nation ceremonies, which the Rastafarians used to just chant. They call it Rastafarian hymns. They sing these old songs over drumming. There'd be like 20 drummers just playing this kind of heartbeat. It was based on a heartbeat. They'd be chanting away like this and listening to American R&B, like popular US hits of the day. Somewhere along the line, the two combined. But reggae was a very slowly evolving thing.
Bob Marley started understanding the ska days, ching, ching, and then go to the rocksteady part, you know, and then the reggae. slow down, yeah? And it's like, you play reggae music in Jamaica those days, it's like you're calling the police, because reggae music starts to play amongst a lot of Rasta people. A lot of people say it's devil music and you can't play reggae music.
The other change was more spiritual than musical. After the 1966 state visit of Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie to Jamaica, the Wailers became deeply involved in the Rastafarian movement. Bob and the Rasta elders prophesied that Jesus would come again, but in another name. He believed that the powers of the West were being deceived by looking for the Redeemer in the name of Jesus.
That first night we blessed be His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie, Jah Rastafari, who liveth and reigneth with I and I continually, ever faithful, ever sure. Jah Rastafari, with no apology. And this is the Rastaman vibration.
Rasta is something from the heart. Rastafari is not like a religion, it's like more like a concept for the people, something to believe in. Growing up as a Rasta, when the parents say, go and cut your trim your boy, you know, it was a problem. See, because everybody's supposed to look like American Jerry Curl, and, you know, most Jamaican people are slaves, like, come from Africa as slaves. So, you find the Rasta people, well, it was more like the underprivileged, you know. Rasta was really, well, like a burden to the society. The policeman in Jamaica now, well, there was more racism with them. You see, because if you're a Rasta, you talk about Rasta and a policeman catch you, you're going to jail.
The police gave us a hard time. There was roadblocks everywhere. It was very, very difficult. Taxis wouldn't stop for us. He'd say, Esther, you go and stand in the street and they'll stand for you. For example, his car would break down and things like that, and he can't get it fixed. And so it was really very odd.
Rastafarianism is very popular in Jamaica, yet in Canada, the United States, it has a bad reputation. People are associated with drugs and the trafficking of marijuana and violence, police arrests.
Yeah, man, them crucified Christ, remember? Christ was a Christian and them crucified Christ, say him is not what it is.
No, but let's go back to the facts. People have been arrested, and the Rastafarians in Toronto, for example, have a very bad reputation.
I mean, you know, I wouldn't say that the Rastafarians have a bad reputation. I would say people give the Rastafarians bad reputation because the Rastafarians, all of these things happening before the Rastafarians even start coming to Canada anywhere around here.
But the things that are very obvious are things like the way you look. Right? To most people who are very conservative in dress, you look quite strange. Plus the fact that you advocate smoking marijuana.
Yeah, I'll show you this now. Could they tell God that it's not legal?
No, but
they couldn't tell God that it's not legal.
You have a very strong religious belief, but other people don't necessarily share that. And what they see are the obvious things. And isn't it, in fact, true that many Jamaican people get involved in the trafficking of marijuana and therefore get the bad reputation associated with Rastafarians?
People get trafficking. You see, I don't really know anything about those parts of life. You know, all I know about is Rastafari. You know, and try bringing this truth to the people. What the people do with them life, I don't really know about that. I know about my own.
There you are, flying again, your loveliness will cover your shame. There you are, you're taking true love. While you're taking true love, you give them the blame.
Music producer Lee Perry was Jamaica's answer to Phil Spector. In 1969, he recorded a series of sessions with the Wailers. Perry, believing the masters to be his, took them to London and sold them.
For 10 years, he said they worked and worked and worked and never had a penny. All their music was pirated.
Lee Perry had already been quite successful in his own right. He already had a reputation as a nutcase. It was traditional that the producer took all the money and the artist basically got a pittance. And this happened with the Wailers for some years. They had to go through what every artist in Jamaica has to go through, which is getting ripped off stupid.
The Wailers were furious, but ironically it was this betrayal which brought them to the attention of Esther Anderson and her partner Chris Blackwell. of Island Records.
When I came to England and studied acting at the Actors Workshop, when I finished drama school, I did all the usual things like Dixon of Dark Green, Danger Man, The Avengers, all these kind of work that was available for black people, which was not a lot at the time. Eventually did a film with Sidney Poitier, which won the Image Award for me.